quickly try and squeeze in this question here. And it dropped in a couple of times during the presentation itself, in particular, Bret and Hristina during your segments. But Tom, we'd love to hear it if you've got any input as well. But it was just asking, could an employer largely outsource the increased administrative burden that's been caused by the No Surprise Act or the fee transparency rules? So just asking if an employer could perhaps largely outsource that increased administrative burden.
So I'll just jump in there, and I know Hristina and I have actually talked a fair amount about this, and we suspect that a lot of this is going to get outsourced, and that makes sense. I mean, there's just a lot of compliance, but the thing to be aware of when you outsource it is ultimately the failure to comply with the rule is going to fall back on the plan sponsor to pay whatever difference in costs that somebody might end up paying because they didn't comply with the service provider disclosure rules and so on. So it's really going to be, and I actually omitted this, it's really going to be an important process of negotiating your contracts. And that's really what that flow chart was for, is to help you really think when you sit down and negotiate with your carrier, what it is you need your carrier to be doing and what contractual indemnifications you're going to be comfortable with if you're not going to have line of sight directly on that specific compliance requirement. And I mentioned or kind of drawn some connections to the retirement plan universe. For those of you that are HR professionals, you might be familiar with the 401k side where you hire a plan administrator. They're called 316. I envision that there might be something analogous arise in this context where somebody takes on a fiduciary responsibility to manage these requirements for you. It's certainly possible under ERISA that arrangement could arise. But I also caution you that even in those structures, the fiduciary that takes on that responsibility often contracts the exposure back through the agreement, through an indemnity back to the employer. So however you do this, just understand those agreements and understand your individual liability if something goes wrong. And that's really what that kind of slide on the last intended to address.
And I would like to add to that just one quick sentence, and that is that it would be helpful for sponsors to be familiar with the process of the entity they're outsourcing to for mitigating errors when recording adjudication of claims, their process for recording and storing adjudication decisions, etc. Because ultimately the data that is created is going to be the source for all of for many of these requirements for compliance involving any kind of transparency of payment rates in general.
I'd just like to add to that, sort of echoing what you just heard. I think Bret made the point earlier, question of who is a fiduciary like the health plans, and I think the message is get great advice from the outside, but it comes back to the employers. So when you outsource a lot of this, which undoubtedly employers will do, the employer plan sponsor still has an obligation to to prudently select who they're outsourcing this to, make sure that the people they outsource different functions to are experts. You can't just blindly say, hey, I'll hire this consultant, and it's on them because the agreement says they'll have to buy me. You have to really do your homework in terms of just due diligence on everyone you retain to help you with this process.